for fine Mexican cookery. Well, I don't know if you've ever eaten a tamale, but tamales are the perfect example of special occasion food. They're rich, they're wrapped up, and they involve a fair bit of time to prepare. But I think they are definitely worth the effort. And Rick Bayless, too, thinks they're worth the effort. Rick is an award-winning chef-owner of Topolobampo and Frontera Grill in Chicago. His books, Mexican Kitchen and Authentic Mexican, have wonderful recipes. And today we're making what kind, Rick?
We're going to make red chili sauce wrapped up in a corn husk, dried corn husk. This is from the grain corn, the field corn, not from fresh corn. We are going to put into boiling water, turn it off, choose a heat-proof plate, put right down on top. After about an hour, they will be pliable and easy to use as a wrapper.
Excellent.
The first thing that tamales are all about, when you talk about them, people in Mexico immediately think about the masa, the dough that is used. This is the dehydrated powdered form. This is the one that you would use for making the tamales, and this one is the one that's used for making the tortillas. Except that we're not going to use either one. We're going to use the real thing that they come from, and that's the fresh ground masa.
Okay.
Corn that is
Now,
grain corn.
where do we get this?
You could get it only from a tortilla factory. It's not something that you could make yourself easily at home. There's a place up in Boston that does really nice masa by mail order. This feels like
clay almost.
It does, or like Play-Doh. It's almost that kind of consistency. This is dried field corn or grain corn. We're going to make it into a batter now. Down here, we're going to talk about the other ingredients that go into this batter, and one of them that we really do need to talk about is lard. Now, this is fresh rendered lard. This isn't manteca in Spanish, and you know this is even healthier for you than butter. It has half the saturated fat and half the cholesterol, which is something most people really don't know. Into the mixer goes about a teaspoon of baking powder, a scant teaspoon of salt, and we're going to beat that until it's light and fluffy, which is actually not going to take a whole lot. Now, the next part of it is done in 2 stages. Once you see the color lighten a bit in the lard, then half of this fresh ground masa, or if you were using the dehydrated, you would have reconstituted it with water. So half of the masa, half of the chicken broth, beat it until it becomes homogeneous.
Yeah, smoothing out nicely.
Yeah. And it's also beginning to look a lot like cake batter, fairly stiff cake batter. And now I'm going to drizzle in the remainder. So that's 2/3 of a cup total of the broth. Cover it and put it in the refrigerator. I looked up tamales the other day. We had more entries under tamales than any other thing, because every region makes their own special tamal. This is one of the most classic. It's one that everyone would know, and it's one that I think has incredibly wide appeal. We can just dump out all these seeds. Just pull the top of the stem off, open them out, and dump out the seeds. These are New Mexico chilies. They're kind of a medium, not very hot, but a sweet flavor that a lot of people like a lot.
How many do you need?
We need all of them. There are about 6 of them.
So I will help.
Please do. I'm going to tear them up into 3 or 4 pieces. Now, those are going to go in to the blender with some chopped garlic.
Now, how much garlic?
Well, the equivalent of a couple of cloves of chopped garlic.
Okay.
And about 1/4 teaspoon of black pepper. This is very typical of the cooking of Mexico. It's not heavy in spices other than chili. 1/8 teaspoon of cumin, and we need the water to pour over.
Okay, just room temperature?
Room temperature water. We're going to do this as a quick blend.
So 1 cup of water?
That's about 1.5 cups on that. And then we'll make a puree out of them. Then we're going to pour it through a strainer into the saucepan. Now, you see what we've got left here? It's almost just skin of chili. And we've taken all of the pulp of the chili meat and pressed it through the strainer. We're going to chop that up.
Okay, I can do that. How big pieces?
About 3/4 of an inch cubes will be appropriate. Salt is going to go into this pot along with
there.
And right into our pot.
Good.
Uncovered, we're going to cook it for 50 to 60 minutes until it is completely tender and the liquid has reduced to a nice thick sauce.
Yes.
We need another cup and a half of water, if I could ask for you to measure that out for us to go on this. If we cooked it just straight like this, we wouldn't have nearly enough liquid. It would have reduced way before it is finished cooking to tender.
The tamale batter has chilled for about an hour, just as Rick requested, and we need to beat the dough again to lighten it even further.
You've noticed, I think, that it's gotten very thick, thicker than it was before. So we're going to actually use about 3 tablespoons of that sauce. This, by the way, is not only cooked, but it's cooled. So I said you don't want to add anything that is hot to this mix.
That's what makes it pinkish.
Makes it pinkish, and it makes it really delicious, too. And if I could ask you to start working on with a fork,
mashing it a little?
Mashing it a little so it'll be easier for us to get in as a filling for the tamales. Now, I'm going to put a little bit more liquid. Liquid means tenderness. And we're ready to form tamales.
There.
Good. So over to the other side where the corn husks are. And we can take a closer look at this batter. Okay, corn husks. This is cooled off enough that we can handle them, which is what you need before you start. And there's that absolutely pervasive and beautiful aroma.
Do you know that pastry is so important to the French that they have actually designated a patron saint? His name, Saint Honoré, and this cake, at least a version of it, is the patron saint's own cake. And you can find this particularly beautiful version at Paillard Bistro, right on Lexington Avenue in New York City. And the chef, Francois Paillard, is going to show us how he creates this beautiful, beautiful creation.
It's the most traditional recipe from France. This one is a small version. You can have in big size and small size. We may start with the pâte à choux. Alors we have 250 grams of water, 100 grams of butter. We may add a pinch of salt.
Everything's in grams, and everything will be translated on the website into our American measurements.
Exactly. The flour, we need 200 grams.
And using a scale like this really gives you the exactitude that you need for this very scientific endeavor, baking.
You just put on the scale, 200 grams, you know it's right.
But then watch this. This is really great, too. So you just press this, and it goes back to 0. So now you can measure something else into the bowl.
The next ingredient, we have 250 grams of water, 100 grams of butter, and a pinch of salt.
Okay.
What you may do, we may bring to a boil.
So should I go and
Yes.
boil this? Okay.
You see now it starts to boil.
Yeah.
Almost ready to boil. Just add the flour. Voila.
And it's very important to cook the flour, right?
Exactly. What we want to make sure we have no lumps of flour.
Right.
Voila, very good. And you may dry a little bit the mix
Yeah,
over the
so it
flame.
comes away from the side of the pan.
Exactly. That's perfect, that's good enough.
Okay? Okay.
You can dump it.
Okay,
Voila.
you can add the eggs, or I'll pour them
Exactly.
in for you.
One by one.
7 eggs, 1 by 1.
It's because they may absorb little by little the moisture you need for the pâte à choux. Now we can add another one. And you see, it's still warm,
So it's taking the eggs in.
little by little. And you don't want it cool down too fast before you add the eggs. You need one more egg, yeah? It's the same consistency as the whipped cream.
Soft peak.
You can add the last one
Yep,
too.
I think so.
Now, what we do, we roll out 2 discs of puff pastry, very thin.
You can also use store-bought puff pastry. Now, what makes all the little holes? I sometimes do that with a fork.
We use a darker, it's much easier. It's these little things over here. And by rolling over the dough, make all these little holes. At home, I know we can still using the forks or the knife too.
And what's the purpose of docking?
It makes the air going through the dough and it doesn't raise as much as the real puff pastry. Because you know, we just want the texture or the flakiness
Right.
of the puff pastry,
Yeah,
but you don't
want this high.
Exactly, it's not a Napoleon, it's
No.
a Saint-Honoré. Now what we have over here, we have a little bit of egg wash. Alors, you can use egg wash or you can use water.
So just egg.
Exactly.
Softly beaten.
1 egg, but you know the things, you don't want to make too much. Just a little bit enough to stick the patachoux to the puff pastry.
And only around the edge?
That's it.
Okay.
Now we may fill up the bag. You make sure they have no air in the bag. Over here, you may go around the edge. I'm going very slowly than this, you can see. In the center, we just add a little bit of patachoux. It's just to reinforce the cake when it's a big one. Now you see we have the bottom of the Saint-Honoré. Now we have to make the little puff. Over here, we may use the other tray to make the little puff. Alors, you want them pretty small. You can use a star tip or you can use a wrong tip. By using a star tip, you know, you don't have to egg wash them. And you make your life much easier, you know. Voila.
Excellent.
We have everything we need. We have the oven, 375. The puff baked 15 minutes. When they light brown color, they be ready. The big one, 20 minutes. Bake them for 20, 25 minutes. We may see how long it takes.
Okay. While I'm watching the puffs puff, Francois has been making the caramel. Francois, is it ready?
Yes, it's coming up.
Excellent. So why don't you describe what you put in here?
It's very simple. It's just 250 grams of sugar, 50 grams of water, and 3 tablespoons of corn syrup. You bring to a boil and you let cook.
Yes.
Caramel has to be like a little color.
Beautiful color.
It's light brown color. I already have some puff made over here. And this we may start to caramelize them. And what we do, I do some little hole over the back of them already. And you may dip them one by one into the caramel and upside down on the tray. I may do the little decoration. And it's very simple. Just have to melt down the sugar. With the sugar, we can do a lot of things. You see, I may use a little spatula.
It's so pretty, and it'll come right off.
Yes, it may peel off very quickly and very easy. You always have to do on the parchment paper, this one. You know, if you use a silicone sheet, it's kind of too slippery for that.
Those are pretty. They look like the leaves of a palm tree.
Yes, exactly. Always try to make things very thin, because, you know, sugar is not very good to eat, you know, it's kind of very sweet. But you know, the way to remove the sugar from the paper is very simple. You just slide and pick them up. We may use them for the decoration. Over here we have our puff. Now you can see they all caramelized. We may use them for the decoration over here. What we do at this point, we may stuff them with the cream. I may just firm up the whipped cream a little bit. I want nice and stiff, you know. That's perfect. Now we may fold a little bit of the whipped cream into the pastry cream. Very gentle. Into the pastry cream, I have a little bit of kirsch, you know. Now you see, I made a little bit more of whipped cream, not too much. And that be the cream to garnish the bottom of the Saint-Honoré.
Okay.
And on the top is whipped cream. Always the bavaroise on the bottom and the whipped cream for the decoration.
So different tastes as you get down into the dessert.
Exactly. And you know the sugar, you have very little bit of sugar into the cream because you don't want to be too sweet. Okay, now we have the crème bavaroise we may use for stuff the Saint-Honoré. Now we may use a bag, may fill up with the whipped cream.
Do you want me to do the bavaroise on this one?
Yes. That's perfect.
Very nice.
That's good enough. On the side, I've already the Saint-Honoré, some of them already cooked. We may place them, you use a tray. And this, you may fill it up the bottom.
All over?
On the bottom, no on the side.
Is that enough?
Perfect. That's plenty.
Okay.
If you want, you can stuff the puff one by one with a little bit of cream. And over here, you see my sugar still a little bit soft, just enough to glue each puff all around the patachoux.